The jungle had a way of swallowing sound, of taking the ordinary rustle of boots and gear and stretching it into something older, heavier, almost watchful. When the soldiers of Echo Patrol pushed through the rain-soaked undergrowth that night, they weren't thinking about spirits or myths. They were thinking about the extraction point 2 miles ahead, about the storm rolling toward them, and about the strange unease that had settled over the trees like a second darkness. The rain had started minutes earlier, gentle at first, then pounding in sheets so thick that their flashlights became useless beams of white fog. Still they advanced in a single file, moving by instinct more than vision. These men were trained for silence, for patience, for fear. But even in their practiced discipline, something was wrong. The jungle wasn't responding. No insects, no distant animal calls, no wind in the canopy, just the sound of boots sinking into wet earth and something else. A faint rhythm behind them. Soft. Too soft for rain. Too slow for footsteps. But there. Always there. At first the men ignored it. Deployments in dense forests often created phantom noises, but after 10 minutes, then 20, the pattern never changed. It didn't match their steps. It didn't stop when they stopped. And worst of all, it seemed to grow closer. Sergeant Hale was the first to turn around. He lifted his rifle and scanned the path they'd just crossed. Only a corridor of darkness stared back. But the moment he looked away, he felt it. A sensation like breath on the back of his neck, cold despite the warm storm. He didn't say anything, not wanting to ignite panic. Yet every instinct in him, honed through years in service, whispered the same word. Watched. The patrol advanced, their formation tighter now, their breathing growing uneven. The rain washed down their helmets and down the leaves around them, but nothing washed away that feeling. The shadow following them never stepped into sight, but its presence felt denser than the trees, as though somewhere inside the thick darkness behind them, a figure was walking, matching their path, waiting for something. Minutes passed. The terrain grew muddier. Their pace slowed. The sound behind them grew louder, no longer like breath, but like the slow drag of something moving through the leaves. Corporal Reyes finally broke the silence. "Does anyone else hear that?" No one answered, but every soldier stiffened. Hale exhaled slowly and gave a quiet order. "Pick up the pace." For a moment, it worked. Their adrenaline pushed them forward faster, the mud splashing beneath their boots. But the shape behind them seemed to accelerate too. The drag became a scrape. The scrape became a whisper. And the whisper, barely audible through the storm, formed something that sounded like a word, a long, drawn-out syllable that none of them could understand, yet somehow recognized, as if they'd heard it long ago, in stories told around campfires, warnings wrapped in superstition. Reyes stumbled and swore. Hale grabbed his vest before he fell. The soldier's face was pale, his pupils wide. "It touched me," he whispered. "Something touched my pack." Hale whipped around again, rifle raised. Nothing. No shape, no movement, no ember eyes glowing in the dark. Only the storm, only the mud, only the silence. But now the rest of the patrol could feel it too, something closing the distance. They pushed on, their breaths trembling. The canopy above shook as thunder rolled overhead. The forest felt compressed, as if the trees themselves leaned inward to observe. And every member of Echo Patrol began to think the same impossible thought. What if this thing wasn't human? What if the stories told by the locals, the ones the soldiers had dismissed as folklore, held a grain of truth? There were legends in these mountains. Old ones. Stories of a shadow that took the shape of a man, but no longer belonged to any living thing. A figure that followed travelers for miles, and those who finally turned to face it were found days later, with no marks on their bodies, no wounds to explain their deaths, just faces frozen in expressions of terror. The soldiers didn't know the name of the creature. Not yet. But the jungle did. Lightning flashed, and for a single jarring instant, Private Dawson saw it. A tall silhouette standing between the trees, perfectly still despite the storm. No face, no features, just an outline, darker than the night as if carved from shadow itself. His shout broke the unspoken rule of silence. "Contact behind us!" They turned, rifles aimed, flashlights shaking. Nothing. But now the presence was undeniable. The forest felt crowded with something enormous and ancient, something that didn't walk like a man, but stalked like a nightmare wearing the shape of one. The patrol picked up speed again, moving not toward their objective anymore, but simply away from that thing, away from the shape that had haunted them for nearly half an hour. But with every step, its presence grew heavier, closer. And then the radio static erupted. A voice, not from their own comms channel, not from any frequency they recognized, hissed through their headsets, a low, distorted murmur that crackled and bent, whispering the same impossible syllable over and over. The one they'd heard in the storm, the one they couldn't understand, but felt deep inside their bones, the one calling their names. Reyes ripped off his headset. Dawson staggered and clutched his ears. Hale tried to calm them, but even he felt the cold edge of panic slicing through reason. The shadow wasn't just following them now. It was speaking to them. They reached a narrow ridge overlooking a ravine when everything changed. The trees thinned, the storm eased, and the presence behind them suddenly stopped, with an abruptness that froze them in place. No dragging sound, no whisper, no footsteps, just silence. Hale slowly lifted his rifle and turned around, fully expecting to see the figure standing there, inches away. But the path behind them was empty. The shadow was gone, completely gone, but the silence it left behind felt worse than its presence. Dawson took a shaky breath. Did we lose it? Hale didn't answer, because he knew with a sinking certainty that something hunting you doesn't just stop, it only waits. The extraction point was still a mile ahead, and the shadow had followed them for miles. There was no reason to believe it had stopped now. Thunder rumbled again in the distance. The soldiers exchanged glances, each face mirroring the same dread. They resumed their march, slower this time, every sense tuned to the forest behind them. And then, somewhere far below in the ravine, they heard it. A single, echoing whisper. The same syllable, calling one of their names. The whisper drifted upward from the ravine like a breath escaping the earth itself, thin, ragged, trembling with something that felt almost like hunger. The soldiers froze. No one dared to lean over the ridge, but each man knew the same thing. Whatever had followed them wasn't gone. It had simply changed its angle, its approach, its patience. Sergeant Hale raised a clenched fist. Halt signal. Rain trickled off the brim of his helmet as he crouched low and scanned the dim slopes below. Nothing moved. The ravine was a pit of blackness, the kind that swallowed shape and depth, until it became a single, featureless void. And yet, the whisper came again, rising from that void with impossible clarity. This time it spoke more than one syllable, a name. Ray. S. Corporal Reyes staggered back, his breath catching in his throat. It wasn't just someone saying his name, it was someone trying the shape of it, as if learning how human mouths formed sound. Slow, careful, curious. "Don't look down," Hale whispered. "Stay on me." But curiosity is a quiet predator. It waits until fear cracks just enough for doubt to slip through. And doubt is all Reyes felt when he leaned forward despite every order, every instinct, every scream inside him begging him not to. Lightning split the clouds overhead. For one brief second the ravine illuminated and Reyes saw a shape far below. A thin, elongated figure clinging to the rock wall, its limbs too long, its joints bending the wrong way, its head tilted upward at an unnatural angle, staring at them. Its body didn't move, not with breath, not with balance. It simply clung there, suspended against the stone as if gravity had forgotten it existed. The lightning vanished, plunging the world back into shadow. Reyes fell to the ground, scrambling backward. "It's there. It's right there, looking up at us." Hale pulled him to his feet. "Move!" he barked. "Go! Now!" Echo Patrol broke into a run, slipping across the ridge, boots splashing mud in frantic rhythms. Their formation shattered. Training collapsed under fear. And somewhere below them the creature began climbing. But it didn't climb like a man. It climbed like a shadow, fast, silent, fluid. Private Dawson, running behind the group, risked a glance over his shoulder, and that was the moment he saw it crest the ridge. The figure rose from the ravine like a mist forming into shape. It wasn't a blur. It wasn't teleportation. It was something worse. It moved so smoothly that Dawson couldn't see its steps, as if reality itself made room for it to pass. It stood in the rain, a silhouette darker than the night around it. No face, no eyes. Not even the impression of features, only hollow space. Yet somehow Dawson knew it was staring straight at him. He screamed for the others. "Behind us! It's up!" The patrol spun, weapons raised, fingers twitching on triggers. Thunder roared again. Flashlights shook violently, beams bouncing across the trees, and in those chaotic flashes of light, the creature didn't attack. It simply stood there, head cocked slightly, like a predator studying prey not yet worth striking. Its shadow stretched across the mud, but the angle of the light made no sense. Hale's beam came from the left, Dawson's from the right, yet the creature cast a single, perfect silhouette forward. Longer than it should have been, tapering into impossible distance. It took one step forward. Just one. The soldiers opened fire. Gunshots tore through the jungle, the echoes hammering against the trees. Muzzle flashes burst in frantic bursts of orange light. Mud exploded, leaves shredded, the air filled with gunpowder and adrenaline. And when the smoke settled, the figure was gone, just gone. No blood, no marks, no footprints, no impact, as if they had fired into an idea, not a body. Silence washed over them again, broken only by the fading rumble of thunder. Hale lowered his weapon slowly. "Keep moving, it wants us to stop. Don't give it that." They ran again, faster, more desperate. The jungle blurred into streaks of green and black. Lightning flickered in the distance, and every flash felt like a countdown to the next time the creature would appear. But it didn't appear. Not immediately. Instead, it whispered, not from behind, not from the ravine, but from right beside them. "Do not run." The voice slid between their breaths like cold fingers. Dawson's legs buckled. Reyes dropped his pack to lighten his steps. Hale gritted his teeth so hard his jaw trembled, but he forced himself to keep going, forcing the others with him, dragging their will forward step by step. The extraction point was close now, half a mile, but the whisper grew stronger, closer, more familiar, because now it wasn't imitating human speech, it was speaking in their own voices. Each soldier heard the voice of someone he knew, someone he trusted, calling to him through the rain. "Sergeant Hale. Reyes, come back. Dawson, stop running." The duplications were perfect, flawless, echoing with the intimacy of memories. The creature was learning them, their sounds, their tones, their fears. And then the voice changed again, shifting into something deeper, older, filled with weight. A single command. "Turn. Around." No one obeyed. They couldn't. Because they all understood something in that moment, something that stretched deeper than instincts or training. Whatever followed them for miles, wanted to be seen, wanted them to look, wanted that one moment of eye contact. And something told them that if they gave it that moment, there would be no extraction point. No rescue, no dawn, only darkness, and a face they would never be able to describe, because those who saw it never spoke again. The trees opened. The beacon light of the extraction site blinked through the fog. They were almost there, almost. A shadow slid across their path. Not from the creature, from above. They looked up. The figure was standing on a branch 20 feet overhead, limbs draped like a marionette that had forgotten how a body was supposed to rest. Its head tilted slowly, almost childlike, as if amused by their effort, their fear, their desperation. And then it dropped. The creature didn't fall like a body succumbing to gravity. It descended like something weightless, like a sheet of darkness peeling off the limbs of the tree. Its outline wavered in the rain, stretching unnaturally, limbs unfurling in slow, deliberate arcs. The soldiers scattered instinctively, rolling through mud and broken undergrowth, but the shadow drifted down between them with a dreadful calm, silent, effortless, patient. Sergeant Hale hit the ground hard and scrambled to his feet, rifle up, breath shaking like he'd been plunged into ice water. His flashlight beam cut across the shape, illuminating its form for the first time with clarity. Or what should have been clarity. Instead, the beam seemed to sink into the darkness that made up its body, swallowed whole before revealing anything. Its surface didn't reflect water. Rain passed through it like through smoke. It had no face, yet the pitch-black space where a face should be pulsed faintly, as though something inside was breathing, or rising. "Move!" Hale shouted, and the men surged again toward the clearing, adrenaline burning away exhaustion. But the shadow turned its head, or what resembled a head, toward them with unnatural smoothness, the movement fluid like ink in water. And then it stepped forward, not fast, not aggressive, just intent. And the trees reacted. The jungle seemed to recoil from its presence. Leaves curled inward. Branches sagged. Even the rain appeared to part around it, falling heavier everywhere except the space the creature occupied, like the storm itself refused to touch it. Dawson fired again, the shots cracking the night open with desperate fury. Muzzle flashes illuminated their faces, twisted, terrified. But every bullet passed through the shadow, kicking up dirt and debris behind it, yet never slowing it. "Why isn't it going for us?" Reyes gasped, stumbling as he ran. "If it wanted to kill us, why hasn't it?" And that was the question none of them wanted to think about. Because something in its slow, deliberate pacing, something in the way it waited, in the way it always stayed close but not too close, suggested a truth much colder than a predator hunting prey. It wasn't chasing them. It was guiding them, herding them. Toward what? Hale didn't want to imagine. The clearing was just ahead. The beacon light of the extraction site stuttered in the fog like a nervous heartbeat. The soldiers charged toward it, every muscle screaming, boots slipping on soaked earth. Then the ground trembled. Just once. A pulse. And the shadow paused. The forest went silent again, so silent that even the patter of rain sounded distant. Hale turned back toward it, panting, trembling, ready to fight or flee or scream. He didn't know anymore. But the shadow wasn't looking at him. It was looking past him, at the clearing, at something behind the extraction point. Hale followed its line of sight. His breath caught. The extraction site, supposed to be a flat expanse with a blinking beacon and a flare marker, looked wrong. Warped. As though the fog thickening across it was rising from the ground instead of the sky. A low humming vibration filled the air, and the beacon light flickered faster and faster, like a heartbeat going into panic. "Hold up!" Hale barked, grabbing Reyes before he stepped inside the clearing. Something's not right. Dawson approached slowly, eyes scanning the fog. What is that? Shapes were forming in the mist, not figures, not silhouettes, wounds, circular distortions in the air, bending light around them in ways that made the soldiers' stomachs churn. Like heat ripples, but vertical, tall as men, shifting gently, pulsing, almost breathing. Reyes whispered, "Sarge, is that—" "No," Hale said, his voice thin. "No, it's not anything. It's stay out of the clearing." But the shadow behind them took another step, its presence looming large, urging them forward with a slow tilt of its impossible head. It wanted them to enter. It had been pushing them here all along. Dawson shook his head violently. "No, no, no! We're not going in there! We're not going—" A whisper curled through the fog, wrapping around their ears like a cold hand. "Come!" This time it wasn't mimicking voices. It was speaking in its own voice, low, ancient, resonant enough to make their bones vibrate. Hale grabbed his men. "Back! Everyone back into the tree line! Now!" But the air behind them grew colder, tighter. Reyes looked over his shoulder and froze. The shadow stood only a few feet away, too close, closer than it had ever been. Its head leaned near Reyes's ear, not touching, never touching, but close enough that Reyes felt heat drain from half his face, and when it whispered, "Look," Reyes's knees buckled. He turned. He couldn't stop himself. His neck twisted as if pulled by invisible threads. His eyes locked onto the fog ripples in the clearing, and the moment he looked into one of the distortions, he screamed, a sound of pure, primal terror, raw, broken, unrestrained. Hale grabbed him and pulled him down behind a fallen branch, covering his eyes with both hands. Reyes was shaking violently, begging in broken sobs, "Don't let it in, don't let it in, don't let it in." The fog pulsed, the distortions brightened, and the humming grew louder. Dawson whispered, trembling, "Sarge, what if those aren't fog? What if those are openings?" Hale didn't answer. He couldn't, because he had seen something in that split second before tackling Reyes, something impossible. Inside one of the distortions, he had seen movement, not from this world. The shadow figure stepped behind them, herding them again like livestock toward a slaughterhouse they couldn't comprehend. Hale made his choice. Run! Deep into the trees, away from the sight, away from everything. Go! They bolted into the forest, tearing through branches and vines, but they didn't get far before Dawson screamed, a strangled cry that echoed through the storm. Hale spun. Dawson wasn't on the ground, he wasn't running. He wasn't anywhere he should be. He was suspended in mid-air, 6 feet above the ground, his limbs hanging limp, his eyes wide open but unfocused, as if staring at something none of them could see. And behind him, the shadow, not touching him, just standing close. Too close. Its head hovered over Dawson's shoulder, slowly turning, slowly aligning, like it was studying him, sampling him, learning him. And then Dawson's body shifted, not physically, not violently, but his shadow changed shape on the ground below him. It no longer looked like him, it looked like the creature. Dawson hung there like a puppet whose strings were held by the dark itself. Rain poured off his uniform, dripping from fingertips that dangled without tension or will. His eyes, still open, no longer blinked, no longer searched, no longer saw, and yet his face wasn't empty. It was frozen in a kind of quiet, unreal understanding, as if some hidden truth had been whispered directly into the deepest part of him. Hale stepped forward instinctively. "Dawson!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Dawson, look at me! Stay with us!" But Dawson didn't move, didn't respond. He hovered as if suspended by the darkness inside the creature, not by any physical force. A faint tremor passed through his body, subtle but unmistakable, like something inside him listened. Reyes grabbed Hale's arm. "Sarge, look at his shadow." And Hale did. The silhouette beneath Dawson was wrong. It stretched too far across the mud, thinner and taller than his body, tapering at angles that didn't belong to any human shape. The arms in the shadow were too long. The fingers branched. The head sloped. The silhouette looked like a distorted reflection of the creature beside him, like the shadow wasn't a Dawson S anymore, like it had been overwritten. Reyes whispered, "It's replacing him." Hale tore his gaze away. "Don't look, don't." But the creature lifted its head, slowly, deliberately, as if acknowledging their fear, acknowledging them, and then it stepped back, just one step. It didn't touch Dawson, didn't hold him. It simply stepped back and waited, like a teacher giving a command to a new student. Dawson's body followed, not by walking, not by moving, but by drifting forward, as if the air carried him like a weightless veil. His boots never touched the ground. His limbs stayed slack. His face stayed frozen. Rain passed through his open eyes as though he didn't even feel it. Reyes sobbed, "Sarge, what's happening to him?" And Hale, who had seen men break in war, who had stared down death more times than he could remember, felt something inside him fall apart. "We get him back," he said. "We don't leave him." They moved forward carefully, weapons raised but useless, nerves stretched thin as wires. Every step felt like approaching a cliff edge, but Dawson drifted deeper into the trees with unnatural smoothness, guided by the creature's mere presence, like a leaf being drawn into the center of a whirlpool. The jungle seemed to react. Branches parted for him, vines curled away, not from fear, but from recognition. As though something inside Dawson had changed enough for the forest to treat him differently than a human. They followed, staying far enough not to provoke the creature but close enough to intervene if any chance appeared. The storm dimmed above them, thunder spreading thin and far away, like they had passed into a different pocket of the world. Finally, Dawson stopped. He hovered at the edge of a natural hollow in the earth, a bowl-shaped depression filled with swirling fog. The same kind of fog they'd seen in the extraction clearing, deep, weighty, alive. This mist did not drift or blow with wind. It coiled and uncoiled in patterns like it was breathing. Low, rhythmic pulses rose from it, matching the vibrations they'd felt earlier. Reyes clamped a hand over his mouth. "This is where it wanted us." But Hale shook his head, not in denial but in clarity. "No, this is where it wanted him." The shadow figure approached the hollow's edge, its shape bending as if the fog drew it in. It stood beside Dawson and slowly rotated its head toward him. Its face, featureless as smoke, came close, examining him with an intimacy that made Hale's skin crawl. Then, with a tremor of motion barely visible, the creature extended one elongated arm toward Dawson's chest. Not touching, just close. Something shifted in the air, a fold, a ripple, a distortion that made Hale feel nauseous. Dawson inhaled sharply for the first time since being lifted, and then he spoke, not with his own voice, with the creature's. A deep, vibrating resonance rolled out of his throat, not human in pitch or shape, a single low word that echoed inside the hollow. "Open." And the fog obeyed. It spread outward suddenly, blooming like a flower of mist, devouring the ground around it. The swirling patterns split apart, revealing glimpses of something beneath, something that did not look like earth. A surface rippled, glowed faintly, shifted like fluid, but shimmered like glass. Something deep, something vast, something alive. Reyes stumbled backward. "Sarge, we have to go, now. We can't fight this, we can't save him, we can't—" But Hale wasn't listening. He was staring at Dawson, because Dawson was changing. His skin began to grey. Not like decay, like shadow spreading under the surface, veins darkened, eyes clouded, fingers lengthened by fractions of inches. "Dawson," Hale whispered, voice breaking. "Kid, fight it. Come back." Dawson turned toward him, slow, stiff, puppet-like. His eyes fixed on Hale. For a moment, just one moment, something human flickered inside them. Recognition. Fear. A plea. Help! Dawson whispered weakly, the creature's deeper resonance slipping behind the syllable like a shadow behind a candle. Hale stepped forward. Reyes grabbed him, panicked. "Sarge, no!" But it was too late. The shadow figure shifted violently, its first sudden movement since they'd seen it. It extended an arm between Hale and Dawson, barrier-like, and the air vibrated with a low, warning rumble. Dawson's body jerked upward again, higher, 10 feet now, dangling as though puppet strings were tightening. His shadow on the ground writhed, stretching longer and longer into the glowing fog. Reyes screamed, "Sarge! He's being pulled in!" And Hale knew it. Dawson wasn't being taken, he was being absorbed. Into that glowing, shifting surface, into whatever lay beneath the fog. Into the same realm the shadow figure came from. Dawson screamed. A sound that was half human, and half something else entirely. And then, the fog exploded upward. The fog erupted like a geyser of white fire, blasting upward with a force that sent Hale and Reyes sprawling into the mud. The sound wasn't like wind or steam. It was a roar, deep and layered, as if hundreds of unseen voices were crying out at once. Branches tore from trees, leaves ripped through the air, and the entire forest canopy shook, as if the earth itself had been struck. And at the center of the explosion, Dawson vanished. Not blown away, not thrown, not consumed, erased. 1 second he was suspended above the glowing hollow, his body twisting and screaming in a voice not his own. The next, he was gone, pulled downward in a blur of motion that burned itself into Hale's mind. A streak of grey flesh and shadow sucked into the luminous void beneath the fog like a soul being dragged underwater by something ancient and merciless. "Dawson!" Hale screamed, his voice ripped raw. He staggered forward, clawing against the wind as it shoved against him, trying to reach the hollow, trying to reach the space where his soldier, his friend, his responsibility had stood mere seconds before. But the wind was impossible. It pressed against him like a wall, pushing him back, forcing him to witness without the power to intervene. Reyes crawled beside him, covering his head, yelling something Hale couldn't hear over the deafening roar. The air vibrated painfully, low frequencies shaking their bones, their teeth, their thoughts. For a moment the jungle dissolved into pure sound and motion, storm and fog and light and terror, until something broke through the noise, a shadow, moving through the storm, rising from the hollow. It was the creature. But it wasn't the same. Its form had grown taller, darker, its edges more defined, no longer flickering or wavering like smoke, but solidifying into something sharper. Its limbs hung lower, fingertips almost grazing the ground. The space where its face should have been now glowed faintly, as though lit from within by the same impossible luminescence beneath the fog. It had taken something from Dawson, consumed something, gained something, and it stood now with a kind of presence, an authority, a dominance, a finality. Reyes whispered through trembling lips, It's stronger." But Hale wasn't watching the creature's body. He was watching the hollow. The glowing surface beneath the fog, the impossible rippling membrane between worlds, was closing. Slowly, deliberately, like an eyelid shutting after awakening long enough to see the world above. And before it sealed, Hale saw something inside it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. A shape, a silhouette, a human silhouette. Dawson. Twisted in a way no human body moved, his limbs drifting out of alignment, his face stretched into an expression that looked nothing like fear anymore, more like wonder or belonging. His eyes were open and glowing faintly, and he wasn't screaming anymore. He was watching Hale, watching Reyes, watching the world he no longer belonged to. Reyes saw it too and screamed, "Close your eyes! Don't look!" But Hale couldn't look away, not even as the glowing aperture shrank around Dawson's shifting form, not even as the fog folded inward like a living thing exhaling its last breath. The last thing he saw was Dawson's hand, elongated grey, no longer fully human, reaching toward the surface as if trying to touch the world he left behind. Then the membrane snapped shut. The fog fell still. The hollow became silent. And Dawson was gone. The wind died instantly. The roar stopped. Rain fell normally again, tapping against leaves as if nothing had happened. Only Hale's breathing remained ragged, loud in the sudden quiet. He stumbled backward, collapsing into the mud, staring at the hollow as tears mixed with rain on his face. "No," he whispered. "No. No." Beside him, Reyes shook uncontrollably, his body going into shock. "Sarge, what now? What do we do? What is this?" Hale didn't answer, because the creature had turned, and it was walking toward them. Not quickly, not aggressively, but with purpose. Its steps didn't disturb the mud. Its shadow stretched across the ground unnaturally, reaching toward them long before its body did. And its glowing face, featureless but undeniably alive, pulsed like a heart. Reyes scrambled backward, choking. "Stay back! Stay back!" He fired wildly, bullets tearing through branches, slicing through the creature's form. It didn't react, didn't slow, didn't even acknowledge the shots. Hale reached out, grabbing Reyes's arm. "Stop! Stop!" But Reyes was beyond calm. He bolted to his feet and ran, sprinting into the trees. "Reyes!" Hale shouted. "Don't!" Too late. The creature didn't chase him. It didn't have to. Reyes had barely taken 10 steps when something moved to his right. A black shape, thin and long and instantaneous, flickering between one tree and the next, with impossible speed. Reyes screamed and vanished into the foliage. Hale ran after him. Branches tore at his face, mud splashed under his boots. The jungle blurred around him, but when he reached the tree line, Reyes stood motionless, completely still, facing away, body rigid, arms at his sides. "Reyes?" Hale whispered. Reyes turned, slowly, and Hale staggered back with a choking cry. Reyes's face was covered in something dark, like soot or ash, drifting across his skin in swirling patterns. His eyes were wide but empty, reflecting the faint glow of the creature behind him. And his shadow. His shadow was wrong. It had two silhouettes. Reyes's. And beside it, attached to it, a second form, thin, long, clinging to his outline like a parasite. Hale's voice broke. "No. No, not you too." Reyes inhaled shakily, his mouth opened, and a whisper, the creature's whisper, spoke from inside him. "Next." The creature stepped into view behind Reyes, and Hale realized he wasn't the target.